Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm not.
So Big Ten and Pac-12 have just announced that they are canceling their fall football seasons. We've kind of been on a slow crawl to college football, trying to figure out if we were going to have seasons or not. These conferences opting out of the fall season or canceling them is obviously massive, massive news for the industry. It's a huge ripple effect. Many things are affected by them canceling the fall football season. Overall, my number one takeaway is I feel horrible for these student athletes whose futures are going to be affected by them not having a fall football season. They're talking about moving it to the spring, which is kind of ridiculous, and I'll get to that in a second. But my immediate emotions are with the students, because it's awful for them. Their futures, for some of them will depend on playing a football season. They've committed to these schools. It's really devastating for them. Obviously, there's coaches and staff that may lose their jobs. There are cities that are going to be affected financially by this. There's a lot of ripple effect, like I said, to them canceling the football season. I really haven't given a prediction about whether they were going to have college football or not. I wasn't really optimistic. And my main reason for why I wasn't optimistic is also my main takeaway from, other than obviously the kids being affected, from this decision that has been made. And that is, we need a college football commissioner. We just do. It's time. We've arrived at Hell's Gates, all right? We may have some college football this year. There might be the SEC, there might be the ACC or Big 12. We don't know. Pac-12 and Big 10 are out, so they say. But there needed to be a commissioner. Much like our country and its states, there needs to be a strong leader who can unify everyone and get everyone on the same page and have one voice and help get everyone together to make decisions that affect everyone else, because that's what this is really about. And college football doesn't have that. Mark Emmert is the head of the NCAA. He's not making all these decisions for all of these different conferences. And college football, much like our country, is made up of different conferences who all operate independently, which is why the Big Ten and Pac-12 opting out don't necessarily mean that the SEC or the ACC are going to opt out or cancel their seasons. There needs to be a commissioner of college football. They treat college football like it's a professional sport, even though it's not. And then you run into these situations where you have to make these massive decisions for thousands and thousands of people, and there's no unification across the board. There's no one person bringing everyone together, making these decisions, laying out a plan so that we can all get on the same page. So the biggest takeaway for me, the biggest learn from this, is that needs to happen. Someone needs to be paid, and they don't need to be under Mark Emmert. They need to be beside him. They don't have a boss. They're not answering to anyone. They are solely there to get college football to the next level so it can run seamlessly, so it can get rid of all the excess nonsense that doesn't need to go on, and can get everyone on the same page. It's super important. And had that happen, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in today. Now, look, I understand they're student athletes. I was a student athlete. My older brother was a student athlete. My younger brother's a student athlete. I spent a lot of time around college sports. I understand what this is all about. I understand the anxiety of sending a kid out to play football and a pandemic. I'm aware of the implications of that, right? So I don't say anything that I'm about to say with any callousness or avoiding the situation. I think you know where I stand on all of this, right? But here's the situation. These leagues have all done an amazing job. The professional leagues have all done an amazing job at getting back to playing sports. We've seen it. The bubbles are amazing. There's been no positive tests. There's been thousands of tests administered. Everyone gets tested every single day. Even baseball, who had a couple of hiccups, they're not in a bubble, and they've managed to do it. But the difference is professional sports cannot in any way be compared to college sports. There's so many layers. It's so much more complicated than that. So what really had to happen in order to get college football back, aside from having someone get everyone on the same page, which obviously that did not happen? One, this year, they had to treat college athletes like professionals. Now, what does that mean? It means that they are the ones literally taking all the risks, the college students are, while not getting paid. And that's the main reason why you can't compare it to professional sports, because professional sports are represented by unions and agents And they collectively bargain as a group of adults who are paid for what they do to decide to put themselves in that situation. They're being paid to do that. College athletes are not paid to do that. Therefore, they cannot, and they don't have representation. So they can't walk in a room and say, hashtag we want to play, because they don't have anyone representing and fighting for them, right? So you had to give a little bit. And in order for them to give a little bit, they'd also have to give a little leverage they have moving forward when there's no longer a pandemic and the student athletes want to come back and unionize or come back and make more demands, because they were able to do it before during a pandemic when they realized they are the actual product. Nothing else is. They're the product. There are no owners. They are the ones bringing in all of the money, all of the TV revenue, all of the sales, all of the merchandise. It's all 100% student athletes. So they need to be treated like professionals in this pandemic, which these schools were never, ever going to do. That's one. Two, the medical protocols had to be agreed on uniformly by all of the conferences. That's what a commissioner would do. They would put together a medical protocol plan, right? Just like all the professional leagues did. Everyone would sit down together using all the information that we have currently, figure out how we could get testing for every single school, right? Or a testing protocol for every single school. How are we going to house the football players? Or how are we going to house football players that they're going back to schools where there's students coming back? How are we going to house the football players that are going back to campuses where there are no students? Is that even going to work? How's it going to work with Title IX? Do we have to bring back one women's team? There's so many complicated things to this, but the medical protocol needed to be agreed on by everyone, just like it was with the professional sports, right? And waivers needed to be signed for all of the athletes. Now, everyone is freaking out about this when you say that. Like, how could you ask someone to sign a waiver that signs away their right to sue? Because that's what this is all about. What this all comes down to at the end of the day is liability. Because they keep talking about how it's about health and safety. Well, if it was about health and safety, then why would you want to play a spring season? Because if you play a spring season, then you're playing 2 football seasons within 1 calendar year, which everyone in football agrees is not a safe idea. It's too much for the human body. So it's really not about health and safety for the actual body. It's just health and safety for getting a virus, which then you could come and sue the school for. So liability waivers that cover the school completely would have to be signed by all of these athletes. And I know that sounds ridiculous and callous, but that's the reality. There was no way that these schools were going to put themselves in a position where they could possibly get a class action lawsuit for bringing football back. They're not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. And you can't blame them for not doing it. Why? If I'm a school administrator, I'm the school president, I'm going to risk a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit by the football team because we allowed them to come back during a pandemic and don't have any protection legally. Like these are the things that happens if someone gets sick. So there was no way that any of that was happening without it. You're talking about student athletes. So not only would the adult student have to sign it, their parents would have to sign it. Say they're underage, because I went to school and was a student athlete at 17. Your parents would have to sign it too. It's incredibly complicated. On top of the fact, these schools, unlike bubbles, and unlike professional leagues that aren't in bubbles, because these people already live in their homes, these athletes, these student athletes are going to communities where they don't live. So if they have COVID, they're bringing it there. If they're out into the community, they could spread it if they're not being responsible. So this is not just about affecting the students that are inside the campus. Campuses are in cities and in small towns. So you're talking about hundreds or thousands of students coming back to a community and possibly spreading it there. So there's so many layers to bringing college football back. And the bottom line to me is, this was a complete and utter lack of leadership. We've been saying it since the pandemic started. If you wanted college sports back, everyone needed to be responsible. Nobody wanted to hear anything about it. Everyone's out here with their fake medical degrees and their YouTube conspiracy videos trying to convince everyone that this isn't real. Well, here we are. Like I said, we're at hell's door. This is the reality. And this is not something that I think any of these league commissioners or these conference commissioners took lightly, but there are massive effects to them canceling the college football season. And really, we are pretty much all to blame for it. Like that's just a reality of it, because the pandemic is raging. There's no leadership. There's no one getting this under control. There's no one telling anyone what to do that makes any sense. I mean, one person got their information from a meme and the other person's listening to Fauci, and this person thinks that masks are violating their rights, and this person thinks that you have to walk around in a hazmat suit. There's no unifying voice. There's no unifying direction, and it's trickled down into sports. Because you're talking about student athletes, amateur athletes that you're sending out onto a field, that you're sending out to schools who could possibly be infected, spread it to other people, or God forbid, get some lasting effects on them. And don't say that young people don't die from it. That's not factually accurate, and that they are unaffected by it. Also not factually accurate. Is it a small percentage? Yes, but we've already seen cases of young people dying, and we've already seen cases of young people having lasting effects, heart effects, different things that happen to their body from catching this virus. So no, it is not a blanket statement that it doesn't affect kids. There's a reason why these decisions are being made, and it's not because of fear mongering. It's because of the reality that someone could get this virus, become sick and die, or become sick and have lasting effects for the rest of their life. And you can't ask an amateur athlete to be put in that situation when you haven't put together the proper safety protocol or have yourself protected from possible liability, which again is what this is really all about. So is it a disaster? Absolutely. Am I hoping that there's still some college football? Yes, and I think that there will be. I think the SEC and the ACC will move forward, possibly the Big 12, but we'll see. At the end of the day, this was kind of a predictable outcome, even though I didn't want to say it, I didn't want to speak it into existence. It seems we've arrived, and my heart is, as always, is with the actual players, because they're the ones that are affected the most.